Some stories haunt the mind long after they're told. They linger in the quiet corners of your thoughts, scratching at the edges of your dreams. These aren't just ghost stories. They're tales of terror that will make you question what lurks in the shadows, what lurks just beyond the reach of your light. The unknown has always held a certain power. It whispers to us in the dead of night, preys on our deepest fears. Tonight we delve into that darkness. Tonight we face the things that go bump in the night. Are you ready? It started subtly, a scratching sound coming from the vents of Sarah's apartment. At first she dismissed it as an animal, a rat perhaps, but the scratching persisted, growing louder each night. It seemed to follow her, shifting from room to room. Sleep became a distant memory. Sarah felt a constant prickling sensation on the back of her neck. Fear took root in her heart. One night the scratching reached a fever pitch. Unable to bear it, Sarah grabbed her phone. She aimed the camera towards the vent. Setting the phone to record, she fled to the all-night diner. Sleep, when it came, was filled with unsettling dreams. The next morning, Sarah returned with dread. She replayed the recording with bated breath. The scratching was louder, but something else chilled her. A voice, barely a whisper, seeped through the recording. It spoke of her fear. Panic seized her. Someone had been watching her. She called the building Super, her voice trembling. He arrived, toolbox in hand, smirking. Another city dweller, he thought, driven mad by the silence, but the smirk vanished when he removed the vent cover. Inside, nestled amongst the dust, lay a phone charger, its LED light glowing eerily. It wasn't hers. The streetlight seemed to flicker and dim as Michael hurried down the deserted avenue, his breath misting in the cold night air. He'd worked late again, the office building eerily silent, save for the hum of distant computers. A feeling of unease clung to him, prickling at the hairs on the back of his neck. It was then that he saw him. Standing beneath a flickering streetlight, bathed in its sickly yellow glow, was a man. He was tall and thin, dressed in an ill-fitting suit, his features obscured by the shadows. But one thing was terrifyingly clear. A wide, unnerving grin stretched across his face, a grotesque parody of a smile. Michael quickened his pace, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He risked a glance over his shoulder. The man was closer now, his grin wider, his movements jerky and unnatural, like a marionette controlled by a novice hand. Fear propelled Michael forward, his footsteps echoing loudly in the stillness. He fumbled for his keys, his hands slick with a cold sweat. Reaching his apartment door, he threw it open and slammed it shut behind him, the lock clicking shut with a reassuring finality. He leaned against the door, his chest heaving, trying to slow his racing heart. It was just his imagination, he told himself. The stress, the late nights, they were playing tricks on his mind. He closed his eyes, willing himself to relax. A soft, almost imperceptible tapping sound cut through the silence. He opened his eyes, his blood turning to ice. Plastered on the peephole of his apartment door, staring at him with that same chilling grin, was the man from the street. Chapter 3. The Whispering Woman. Little Emily had always been a quiet child, content to lose herself in her world of dolls and imaginary friends, but recently her silence had taken on a new quality, one that sent chills down her parents' spines. She would sit alone in her room, whispering to something unseen, her tiny brow furrowed in concentration. At first, her parents dismissed it as childhood fantasy, the active imagination of a lonely little girl. But as the weeks went by, the whispering grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to emanate from the depths of Emily's closet, a dark, cavernous space that had always held an unspoken air of disquiet. One night, Emily's mother, unable to ignore the unsettling whispers any longer, crept to her daughter's room. She stood outside the closed door, her heart pounding in her chest, listening as Emily's hushed tones mingled with a voice that was low, raspy, and undeniably ancient. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound calm. Emily looked up, her eyes wide and unblinking. "I'm talking to the lady in the closet," she replied matter-of-factly. A cold dread washed over Emily's mother. She slowly pushed open the closet door, her breath catching in her throat. Inside, hanging amidst Emily's brightly coloured dresses, was a single white child-sized dress. It swayed slightly, as if stirred by an unseen breeze. Chapter 4. The Call from Below. The rusted rotary phone lay heavy in David's hand, its black bakelite surface cold to the touch. He'd unearthed it while digging a new flower bed, its twisted cord snaking out from the earth like a forgotten vein. Intrigued by the relic from a bygone era, he'd painstakingly cleaned it, the years falling away to reveal its once gleaming surface. To his surprise, it still worked. He plugged it into an old jack in his basement, the dial tone a low, rhythmic pulse in the stillness. It was then that he noticed a blinking light on the base, indicating a missed call. Curiosity piqued. He picked up the receiver and pressed the single red button, the only one present besides the numbered dial. "Hello?" he said tentatively, his voice echoing in the cavernous basement. Silence. Just as he was about to hang up, a voice, thin and reedy, like wind whistling through dry leaves, answered. "Help me," it rasped, the sound sending a shiver down David's spine. David's grip tightened on the receiver. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The voice on the other end seemed to sigh, a long, drawn-out exhalation of despair. "I'm buried," it whispered, the words heavy with a sorrow that transcended time. David's blood ran cold. He hung up the phone, his heart pounding against his ribs. He tried to rationalize, to tell himself it was a prank, a cruel joke. But deep down, a primal fear whispered a different truth. Chapter 5. The Mirror That Moved. The antique mirror had been a housewarming gift, its ornate silver frame and gleaming surface a source of both fascination and unease for Eleanor. It hung in her bedroom, reflecting the room with an unsettling clarity. There was something about the way it seemed to absorb the light, to hold it captive within its depths, that sent a shiver down her spine. One night, as Eleanor was preparing for bed, she caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror's reflection. She paused, holding her breath, her heart quickening. The reflection in the mirror, her reflection, continued to move, lifting a hand to brush a stray strand of hair from its face, a slow, deliberate movement that Eleanor hadn't made. Terror, cold and sharp, shot through her. She stumbled back from the mirror, her eyes wide with disbelief and burgeoning fear. The reflection, however, mimicked none of her fear. Instead, it tilted its head, a sly smile spreading across its lips, a grotesque mockery of Eleanor's own. Night after night, the terrifying tableau played out. Eleanor would find herself frozen in place, her breath caught in her throat as she watched her reflection move independently, its actions growing bolder, more menacing. Then, one night, the reflection reached out from the mirror, its long, slender fingers scrabbling against the glass, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. Cracks, spiderweb thin, appeared on the mirror's surface, radiating outwards from the point of contact. Eleanor watched in horror as her doppelganger continued to push, its malevolent gaze boring into hers, its lips forming silent words that seemed to echo in the stillness of her room. "Let me in." Some stories are just stories, but others, they stay with you. They burrow under your skin, whispering doubts in the quiet moments, making you question the shadows in the corner of your eye. Now the question is, which one will keep you up tonight? Do you trust the walls around you, the reflections that greet you in the dark? Or will you forever feel a chill, a whisper of unease, knowing that some things can't be explained away? If you love terrifying stories, make sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, because there are more nightmares waiting for you. Sweet dreams, if you can sleep at all.